On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I'm joined by Lisa Curtis, founder and CEO of Kuli Kuli Foods, the company that introduced moringa to the U.S. market. Lisa first discovered moringa while serving in the Peace Corps, where local women showed her its incredible health benefits. What began as a personal discovery turned into a mission to bring this nutrient-dense superfood to American homes while empowering the farmers who grow it. Since launching Kuli Kuli at age 22, Lisa has scaled the company into more than 11,000 retail locations, raised millions in values-aligned investment, and built a Certified B Corp that continues to innovate with powders, gummies, lattes, and looking towards products focused on women's health. Along the way, she navigated the challenges of being a category creator, pivoted product lines based on customer feedback, and stayed committed to sustainable sourcing and fair partnerships with farming communities worldwide. Lisa's journey is one of innovation, impact, and resilience. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. And today I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Lisa Curtis, the founder and CEO of Kuli Kuli Foods, the first brand to introduce moringa to the U.S. market. Now, Lisa discovered moringa's incredible nutritional power while serving in the Peace Corps, and she turned that personal discovery into a mission to bring superfoods to American shelves while creating income for smallholder farmers around the world. Now, from launching Kuli Kuli at the tender age of 22 years old, I mean, what were you doing out there at 22 years old, listeners? That's what I want to know. Because she launched this business and has grown it to over 11,000 retail locations, and it's a certified B corporation. Now, I personally can't wait to hear how this all happened because her journey is one of innovation, impact, and resilience. And my goodness, Lisa, have you been busy since you were 22 years old? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, what an exciting story. So, when we hear that, so we are now, let's not say at the tail end, but we're at the fully developed phase of the business. So it sounds like, oh my God, that's so much work. And it really is. But it always starts with an idea. And then at some point you're like, I could do that idea. And in my life, I have done that. And sometimes I'll let you know I've regretted it when I realized how much work it was. So take us
For
back to the
sure.
beginning of your story. So you are a 22-year-old out there in the world trying to do good in the Peace Corps in Nigeria, it was, right?
Yeah, in Niger in West Africa. So I was in a very rural village, if you can imagine, like no electricity, no running water. I lived in like a little mud house, and I'm a vegetarian and found myself eating just like basically rice and noodles every day. And it was a diet that left me feeling really tired and really weak. And so I asked some of the women in my village, what can I eat that will give me more energy, more protein, more vitamins? And they pulled these leaves off a tree and mixed them into this popular local peanut snack called Kuli Kuli and said, eat this Kuli Kuli moringa, it'll make you feel better. And I was like, tree leaf? Like, what is this? It seemed a little bit weird. But I trusted these women. And at that point, I would have taken anything just to feel better. So I started eating this Kuli Kuli moringa every day. And it had the most transformative impact on my health of anything I've ever taken. So after like 2 weeks, I like went back to him and was like, "What is this? Why aren't more people eating it?" And started to do some research and realized that this moringa tree grows all over the tropics. It's known in Ayurvedic medicine. It's the national vegetable of the Philippines. It's revered all over the African continent as the miracle tree, but it hadn't really made it to the U.S. So like you said, at the age of 22, was like, no problem. I got this. I'm just going to bring moringa to the US and partner with small farmers like the women I had been working with in my village.
Listen, I've often said that same thing. I'm like, you have to go into certain things just being totally naive and uneducated because if you knew, you would be like, oh, wait, I don't know if I want to get involved with that. But I mean, how exciting then you discover this, basic, like not basic, but this superfood, and you look around and you're like, why doesn't the rest of the world know this? And I've had that instance, like that circumstance, so many times in my lives when I'm like, wait, and then I remember, well, not the rest of the world did know about it. Americans didn't know about it because we also have our American
Right.
bubble, which we
Totally.
which many of us happily live in, and we look outside the world and it's kind of like, if it doesn't show up on our store shelf, then we almost don't trust it, right? And the other thing is about, the American dietary system now is like we have been trained that if it doesn't come out of a package, it's not a food. So I can imagine your reaction when they're like, eat these leaves. You're like, well, that can't be good for you because we assume we will die if we eat nature. Like, how many times you've been out and people are like, don't eat the berries, they're poison. It's like, not all
Right.
berries are poison. Your blueberries aren't poison. But we don't know. We don't know where our food comes from
Mhm.
anymore, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right. So, okay. So you're out there and you discover like this was really giving you energy, especially as being a vegetarian, because I understand that I'm a vegan now. So I'm always like thinking about what my
Mhm.
food combinations are. But when you first started eating it, then like, were you just chewing the leaves or adding it to stuff? Or did you already start, figuring out, well, it needs to be like maybe mixed with other things or made into a food product kind of thing? Like, what was your first, I think, experience with it beyond just that moment of like, I'm going to eat some leaves and feel good? Like, what was the next step in your
Yeah.
mind?
So yeah, the initial way I ate it was this Kuli Kuli moringa snack. So Kuli Kuli is a popular peanut snack all across West Africa. And that actually, that inspired when I got back to the US for me to start Kuli Kuli Foods, which is my company today. And that was our initial product, was this kind of like peanut moringa snack. And we have since pivoted and found that the thing that really resonated for us was, moringa in like a powder form. So that Kuli Kuli snack no longer exists, but we kept the name as kind of being emblematic of how do we get moringa into people's diets in a way that really transforms their health in the same way that my health was transformed during the Peace Corps.
Right. So, you were already feeling your own health benefits of it. But at what point then did you start looking into maybe the science of it? Like, what was actually happening there? Because before our interview today, I was actually looking up moringa to be like, well, what is this about? And it absolutely seems like the miracle cure for everything. It's like can help your liver and your spleen and your skin and indigestion and ulcers and all this stuff. And sometimes when I see all of those results attached to one ingredient, I almost get like skeptical, like, does it really help any of that? Or is it all anecdotal and maybe just, what do you call familiar for certain cultures that they're like, we just are going to assign that to it, but does it really work? So when you came back to the US and you're like, I think this is really special and I want to do something with it, what was your next step then to start verifying that, moringa did have these powers to do this or these medicinal properties?
Yeah, so I actually one of my first steps was to reach out to one of the leading researchers on moringa in the country. So it's a guy named Dr. Jed Fahey from Johns Hopkins University. He leads the chemo protective center there, and so he was studying moringa and broccoli sprouts and their ability to lower inflammation in the body and like be, sort of a natural way of helping to prevent cancer. And so he had done a ton of research and had all of these like, scientific lit reviews from both US studies and studies done in other countries about moringa. And we actually, because moringa wasn't really in the US, we had to put together what's known as a GRAS notice, generally recognized as safe notice to the FDA, with all of the substantiation of like why this was a safe product for Americans to eat, what some of the benefits were. So, it's like a 50-page document full of the science behind it. And we needed that just to sell our first product into Whole Foods. So we went pretty deep on the science pretty fast. And I think one of the things we've tried to do even now is really be kind of the non-snake oil salespeople in the sense that we want to speak to what is actually proven in the science, where there is clinical research, and also really acknowledge that there are ways that people use moringa medicinally around the world where there aren't clinical studies. But we do hear from people that like they use it as part of their cancer treatment, or they use it to lower their blood sugar levels, and like that's something we hear a lot, but it isn't something that we necessarily have a study to prove.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. When you have a new ingredient that's relatively new to the public, you do have to show like, is this truly going to fulfill the promises that's made? Because, we especially see that now with marketing and packages. Everything's in natural food, right? Everything has all of these supposed properties, but then you sit there and say, where is it really? And also, how much of it do I have to take to feel the effects of that? Which is always my question. So, when you were first starting, then you came back from the Peace Corps, you get to the US, you start looking into this. What was your next step then? And also, why? Like, why did you decide you wanted to start a food brand? Did you have experience in it? Did you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Because, not everybody just, wakes up one day and says, I'm starting a business from this plant that I found in another country.
Yeah, I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs, came from a family of dentists. So everybody looks at my teeth when I say that. I really, for me, it was about I had been, given so much when I was in Peace Corps. I've been just felt like I learned so much, felt like I had these amazing connections with all of these people there, especially the women's groups that I was working with, and really wanted a way to give back. Felt like I hadn't had the opportunity. My Peace Corps experience had been cut short. There was a terrorist attack in Niger. We got sent home early. And I was like, oh, I feel like I have unfinished business. And I want to do something with this amazing plant. And how can I do that in a way that benefits small farmers like the ones I was working with in Niger, and also provides this amazingly nutritious plant to Americans? That being said, my first thing I did when I got back was I got a day job, because this was not yet ready for me to like fully commit myself to it. And I, had to pay rent. So I worked at another startup. Even though it wasn't a food startup, it was super helpful. I was the fourth employee there. We went from zero to over $4 million while I was there. And so I just got to kind of like understand the whole process of like growing a team, fundraising, communicating, marketing, and then got to go and launch it myself. So I did that for about 2.5 years, and then decided that Kuli Kuli was ready, and I wanted to go all in.
Right. Yeah. So you answered my question right there because I'm always interested, like how did you know the next steps? So you're like, well, I worked at another startup and saw what they were doing. So great. Anybody out there listening, if you really are interested in starting a business, maybe join another startup, see what they're doing, and it'll give you a little head start into what you might need to do next for your business. Or just do
Yeah.
what everybody's doing these days, which is, asking Google AI in some regards of how to start a business. So, I think people have a little bit more of a cheat sheet than you did back then, right? Because you started this when you were 22. So how many years has Kuli Kuli been in business then?
Yeah. So we launched on the market in 2014.
Very nice.
So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you start developing your product. As you said, the first product you developed isn't the one we're at now. So talk a little bit about then when you were first starting and deciding on the product. What was the next step? Did you go right into doing the formulations, or did you look for investing first? Like which side did you take, like product first, or actually having the business startup first?
Yeah, so the first thing for me is I really wanted to test out the product and understand like, will people actually buy this? And if so, what format will they buy it in? So I mentioned the way I had been taking moringa was in this Kuli Kuli peanut moringa snack. got home and initially was just trying to make things in my home kitchen and like test it out on family and friends and realized pretty quickly that this idea of like sort of a peanut ball wasn't really resonating as much with Americans. So we transformed it into a bar, um, recruited my high school friends and said, like, come do this with me. And we then did consumer research at farmers markets. So we were pretty like conscious of what we were trying to accomplish. We weren't trying to sell at farmers markets forever, but we were trying to really get an understanding of like, does this product have legs? So we made these moringa bars by hand in a commercial kitchen, basically took all day Saturday doing that. And then Sunday we went and we sold them, but we also surveyed everybody who came by and surveyed, what did they try? What did they like? What did they not like? And got basic demographics of like male, female, approximate age. Do they have kids with them? And from there, we could get a really good sense of like, A, what our conversion rate was, how many people who tried it, bought it, and then also like who was the actual customer that was buying this. And that was some pretty cool data and actually led us to be able to get a meeting with Whole Foods Northern California and say, look, this is the demographic. She is a mom, she is like this age, and she has shopping for herself and her family. She loves these bars because they're like a salad in a bar. Feel like they give her energy. She's getting her greens. They improve her digestion. And we found, at farmers markets, approximately 20% of the people that tried it were buying, which is really high for a sampling event. So that was what then got our foot in the door.
Absolutely. You are not the first one of my guests who had said that they launched a product at farmers markets. In fact, for our audience that's listening out there, I highly recommend whatever business idea you have, take it to a farmers market because there's nothing like a random sampling of people to give you this data feedback as to, is this something people want, like, and even understand, because that was the other
Yeah.
thing you were up against is you had this new ingredient called moringa, and we had not heard of it really at that point. It's much more now, I think, because of social media and all the social media trends, people jump on stuff
Mhm.
that they might be more familiar with it. And if you guys are watching the video right now on YouTube, you will see Lisa enjoying one of her moringa lattes. Are
Yes,
you drinking? Which one are you drinking?
this is the matcha moringa.
Okay. Yeah.
So this
Okay.
is our matcha moringa with lion's mane. It's got, great for energy and mental clarity. Gives you kind of energy without the jittery.
Very nice. So yes, Lisa was kind enough to send me a little gift box. That was in my gift box. I was eyeballing it today. But I will say the first thing I dove into was the gummy form. So let's talk about the formulation. Because like you said, when you first launched in the farmer's market with these balls, you got a certain amount of feedback. And then working, just your conversation with Whole Foods, you moved into the bars. Now, I don't know when this happened in the US, but we are obsessed with powders and gummies right now. So when did you start realizing that your product would really translate well into these forms? Because right now it's gummy everything.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It was a little bit by accident. This was way back. So before we officially launched, we were doing testing in farmers markets. This was like 2013. So we were still in the bar craze. Bars everywhere. Gummies weren't really a thing. Supplement gummies certainly weren't as much of a thing as they are now. And we didn't think anybody would know what to do with moringa powder. So we purposely were, trying to add it to these bars and not selling it on its own. Then fast forward to kind of like mid 2014, we were like, okay, let's test out some moringa powder on our website. We got like did like a small batch, like 200 little jars of moringa powder. And then a couple weeks later, I got an invitation to appear on MSNBC's Morning Joe, which is one of the most widely watched news shows in America. And I talked about our products. They like showed our website, they showed the moringa powder in the bars, and it was like the wildest A/B test you could have ever imagined. Everyone bought the powder. We had some bar sales too, but it was like 10 to 1. People were really going for the powder. And we had a little survey of like, how'd you hear about us? It was all the news article. And then what are you planning to do with this? And it was really moringa powder for smoothies that people really loved the idea of like, it can, it's my greens. I can just add it in there, gives me energy and improves my digestion. That's what I want. Um, And so that was a pretty clear market signal of like, oh, we got to launch this moringa powder. So then we partnered with Whole Foods. So, we had started one little region in Northern California in 2014, and had done well enough that they decided to launch us nationwide in 2016 with the moringa powder. And then we created another line of wellness shots as well.
How did you first get a conversation going with Whole Foods? Like, because I've also had other guests say that to me, like, oh, I got into Whole Foods or I talked to Whole Foods. I mean, is Whole Foods just really receptive to new business conversations? Because they seem very friendly to at least to the guests that I've had. So where did you get in contact with them? How did that happen?
Yeah, I think Whole Foods is a great place to start as a small natural food brand. They are very open to innovation and they take pride of like having new innovative products on their shelves. So they actually have a forager program, which is where I mean, you're like, I think there's like eight of them across the country who are just their whole job is to like find cool new brands and bring them into Whole Foods Market. So I was somewhat lucky in the sense that we were, at these farmers markets doing all this research, and we ran into somebody who worked at Whole Foods who said, like, hey, check out this forager program. So I like went online and applied and got a meeting with the forager. He was like, this is really cool. We love the social impact. We love that it's like very unique. It's really different than any other bar we have on our shelves. Go ahead and get a meeting with the whole body buyer. So I got a meeting with, the whole body Northern California buyer. I was so nervous. I like stayed up all night, like making bars by hand. And then it was simply probably still like the best meeting I've ever had in the sense that we walked in. She had just seen Moringa on Dr. Oz. She loved Moringa. She had like deep dived on all the benefits. And she was like, oh, we don't have anything like this in our stores. We need it. And that was it. We're like, oh, okay, great. Um, Although there was a small catch. The thing that I had not realized is that she authorized us for all 50 Whole Food stores in Northern California. But then I needed to go store by store and sell it in because it was up to each store on whether they wanted to bring it in. So I spent a good part of 2014 driving literally from like Sacramento to Fresno all across Northern California, selling in these bars. And I would sell it in, and then I would stand there and I'd pass out samples and I'd talk to customers. And, I think when people think of like starting a company, they don't often think of like the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. But that was definitely my first intro was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, we're at where I call the point and click culture, where everybody thinks it's a couple of clicks on a keyboard and you launch your website, you launch your business, the money starts rolling in. And
Right.
you know what? Your keyboard can do a lot for you, but there is nothing like a face-to-face meeting, honestly, to really get people behind you. And you experienced that yourself. You found it at the farmers market. You found it having to go one on one with these Whole Foods people because guess what? People are still making these decisions. It's not all AI yet. And there's
Yeah.
nothing like having that personal relationship built. In fact, I'll tell you a little story about myself. So, many years ago, I used to run a breast cancer charity called Busted Foundation. And when we were doing
Mm.
certain fundraisers, I had learned that Whole Foods also had a charity outreach program where you could apply to be like the charity store of the day and you would get proceeds from that specific day. And I have several Whole Foods around me in the area because I'm in Los Angeles. And it was so funny because I went and met with all these different stores, and it was crazy just the relationships I was able to build with some people and then not with others. But it was still Whole Foods, right? So some of them were like, yes, we're on board with you. Here's, your day. Here's the proceeds. And others are like, no, that's not really, we're not interested in. So, for anyone that's like, again, listening out there, it's like, don't be afraid to go out there and meet people face to face and build that relationship because they'll become your biggest advocate, as I'm sure Lisa can attest to, right?
Totally. Yeah. And that's the cool thing, even today, 11 to 12 years later, many of the people that still work at Whole Foods like remember me. They remember me being the girl that came in and like chopped up bars and passed out samples. And they like love our brand because they're like, we love, we were part of you starting, we were part of you launching, and we love how far you've come. So I agree. It's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were having the Whole Foods discussions, had you already secured funding to get into, let's say, larger scale production? Because we know if Whole Foods comes calling, girl, it's the Oprah effect. You better be able to deliver that product. So where were you at in your business at that point?
Yeah, so I quit my job in November 2013, and right around the time that I was kind of exiting out, I ran an Indiegogo campaign. And that was all about let's launch this idea, let's get enough funding to do our first manufacturing run of these moringa bars. And that gave us $53,000 at the time. We were like the most popular food campaign that Indiegogo had ever had, which was pretty wild. And that was just enough to do the manufacturing, the packaging, kind of the initial launch into retail. Not enough to pay anyone anything, not enough to like do any real marketing. And so I very quickly hit the road and like went and to every single pitch event I could find. I'm located in the Bay Area, so there's certainly a lot of pitch events, and just started talking to everyone I could. I was 23, so I didn't have like a big network. There weren't like a ton of friends and family who I could go to. So I really just started to talk to lots of different angel investors and really trying to help them understand like this is something that can create a huge social impact. It also is something really unique and exciting and new to the market.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's definitely the key is like getting people on board and then figuring out where that money's coming from. Because as with anything, it takes money to produce a product, even when you're not making money at the get-go. So you had
Does.
mentioned you had gotten on news shows like The Morning Joe, and I know you've been featured in Forbes Under 30 list and things like that. You've gotten a lot of really good press out there. How were you able to make those connections where people knew you? Were they coming to you because Moringa was starting to have its moment? Or was it because of this networking you were doing that people were starting to, I think, become aware of Lisa Curtis and like this new revolution called Kuli Kuli?
Yeah, good question. So in our early days, I did three things. And I was working very, very long days, but I was doing sales. So sales meant, calling stores, going to stores, passing out samples. I was doing fundraising. So I was pitching, you know, investors, trying to set up coffee dates, doing like every event I could find. And I was doing PR because I really thought, like, look, we don't have a marketing budget. But what we have is an interesting story. And I think a lot of people were really interested in this idea of like from Peace Corps to grocery store, like how did you get here? What is this superfood? I've never heard about it. So it was pretty exciting to see just me reaching out to reporters who were writing about this type of stuff, how far we could get.
Yeah, I mean, you have to sell the story. Again, we have to train people on what Moringa is and how it's going to change their life. Because you even took it a step further then. So you are actually a certified B corporation and you work with smallholder farms to ensure fair wages and sustainable sourcing. So talk a little bit about how you're working with these, smaller farms and actually, it's not just a business to make money for you. You're actually helping to lift up people in other parts of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, look, if I just wanted to start a business to make money, there's lots of easier ways to go about it. And this has really been a labor of love. So I think, from kind of those early days in Peace Corps, what I saw was that moringa is this climate smart crop. It's a tree, it grows very well in very hot, dry places, thrives with very little water, and can easily be grown by smallholder farmers. So that was really exciting to me of like how we could have this outsized impact in communities in places like Niger and Ghana, Tanzania. We now source from 7 different countries, primarily on the African continent, and then we also source from India. And we really prioritize, women-led, social impact forward organizations. And we do a lot of partnering with them, helping them hit our quality standards, helping them sell to us here in the US, and you'll meet those high Whole Foods quality levels. And we then invest a lot back in those communities. So we reinvest 10% of our profits. That equates to, this year we'll invest about $50,000 back into the communities that we source from. And the way we do it is a pretty cool model. We really ask them, where would a $5,000 to $10,000 grant make an outsized impact? in your community? Because we don't want to go in and say, you should do this, you should do that. We want to hear from them, like what could make the biggest difference. And so we funded some pretty amazing things from like providing clean drinking water to 800 kids at a local school. We've provided solar to a birthing clinic. We've done nutrition trainings and classes with moringa. We've done like moringa based porridge, moringa based bread for like school kids. It's just been so exciting to see like how creative and how excited our supplier partners are to be able to like create an incredible impact in their community.
Yeah, and they could probably give you more ideas for products too. So when we move beyond the gummy phase that we are in now, perhaps they would have other ideas. Because you're right, years ago we went from smoothies to bars to now we're into the latte phase. Everything's a latte, which I personally
Wow,
love.
yes,
I,
we
I
do love
yes,
lattes.
every time you hold up that cup, I'm like, I'm gonna make one as soon as we're done. That looks delicious. And
It's
by the
really
way,
good.
guys, if you're not watching the video version, please check it out later because Lisa is right. She has gorgeous teeth. Thanks to her dentist family. In fact, it's funny. It's one of the first things I even noticed about you, but that's a whole nother thing. Okay, let's stay on
Hilarious.
topic here. I do have a tendency to go off topic. All right. So now that you are in this space where you have this company that has been, we are going to say successful because you're in 11,000 locations. You have a strong online presence. What does your marketing look like these days? Because Moringa's had its moment. People understand it more. I don't know how much you have to do on the education side, but for the marketing, marketing is something that happens throughout the longevity of any product, no matter how big your business gets. So what are you doing on, as far as building your brand still, building awareness, building supporters, and are you working with any kind of online influencers to do this?
Yeah, I mean, marketing has changed a lot over the years. Obviously being in business for 12 years, like we've done everything. I would say in the early days, we were really big in like events, in-store demos, local events, really trying to kind of get our products into people's mouths. Today we focus in three areas. So the first one is in-store promotion. So we are constantly pushing, off shelves. We're pushing, TPRs, temporary price discounts, really trying to encourage trial and do a lot in the store to incentivize that. I think the second thing we're doing is exactly to your point, influencer marketing. We're very interested in like how do we work with especially the micro influencers, get product in their hand, get them to make some amazing videos. And if those videos are really compelling, then how do we whitelist them and run them as ads? So that's kind of the next phase of that. And then we're also trying to do a lot with retail media. So I think the really interesting thing is the way that like, retailers like Whole Foods obviously being now a part of Amazon, they're doing a lot to advertise online. And like a lot of, customers, especially during COVID, sort of learned like, oh, I don't need to go into the store to shop for my groceries. I'm going to like order them online and get them delivered, or I'm going to order them online and do like an in-store pickup and just like, drive by kids in my car and like have them put groceries in there. So we see that across, Walmart's doing a ton there, Target's doing a ton there. It's really, really interesting to see the ways that you can like touch the customer just from that like retail media. And so that's kind of the biggest thing. And then, I continue to do lots of speaking, lots of storytelling. I love being on amazing podcasts like this and getting the opportunity to tell our story.
Yeah, well, another thing for your marketing, you very smartly have a PR team that is passionate about what you do and your business because they did reach out to us, which I love. In fact, this year has been such a growth for the podcast. We get approached by so many PR people now, which I love because let me tell you, talk about huffing it in the beginning. Like I was out there trying to book interviews myself. We only started a year ago, but it was so hard because the initial
Yeah,
outreach was so hard. But now that PR people come to me, I'm telling you, girl, it's a whole different story. So when you get
it's
your
a great
business to
place to
that level where
be.
people are coming to you, it's quite nice because then you could sit down back and actually do what you like, much like Lisa has. So, Lisa, as far as like, your journey so far, share with us maybe something that you learned along the way that you were like, wow, I didn't see that coming. It was a struggle. And then maybe how you got through it because you've been through so many ups and downs already. What was something that you want to share with our audience that, hey, this happened, but this is how we dealt with it?
Yeah. So one thing that I learned really early on was the importance on not being too narrowly, singularly focused, in the sense of I was very focused on like, we are only working in West Africa. We are only working with women's cooperatives. And like that is the goal and that is the mission of Kuli Kuli. And we, sort of started in Niger where I did the Peace Corps. We found pretty early on they weren't quite ready to export. And so then we moved to this women's cooperative in Ghana. We were sourcing solely from that cooperative for the first like 2.5 years of the business. Then we get the news from Whole Foods, they want to launch nationwide. Then we get the news from our cooperative in Ghana. They had just had a huge wildfire and the whole farm had burned down. So it was one of those moments where I was like, we can't, how can we source from anyone else? Like this is our partner, this is our reason why we believe. And then I started thinking about like, okay, we are here to create social impact and we are here to provide a really high quality product that changes consumers' lives. Is there another way to do that? So kind of had this like, you know, intense moment of like rethinking like what is it that we stand for and is there more than one way to get to the goal? And so we ended up finding this amazing family farm in Nicaragua. They happened to have enough moringa on hand that they could help us just squeak by and meet that Whole Foods launch, nationwide launch. And so I think having just a really clear idea of like where you want to be, but not being so set on like one specific path because it's a winding road and you're going to need to pivot multiple times. And it's something I learned very quickly when our moringa farm burnt down.
Well, as they say, it's always something, and it's how you handle those situations that really marks, I think, the success test moving forward. So, now that you're at this point with the business, what's next for you guys? So you're launching all these different products. Again, the gummies. I'm going to tell you, I was eating this one this morning, the moringa and turmeric gummy. I think it's my favorite because I'm also
Yeah.
super into turmeric. And I just loved its flavor. In fact, let me ask you a question. How many of these am I supposed to be eating a day?
That is like the most common question we get. We tell people eat, 2 to 4 gummies a day. But the cool thing about it is they're made with like real superfood ingredients. There's no added like weird extracts or stuff in there. So eating more is not going to hurt you. Um, and
I was going
the
to say, how many is too many? Because I could easily sit there and just have these at my desk and start popping them because they are delicious. And then I sit there and say to myself, it's a superfood. It's good for you. But, there's also sugar in it, people.
exactly.
So perhaps I don't want to eat the whole bag, but it was delicious. So what's next then, again, on the product realm for you? What do you guys already have your eye on that you're thinking you might want to expand into?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's like a couple things that are next on sort of multiple frontiers. I think for us, we've built this platform for moringa. So, how do we do that with other climate smart, community grown superfoods that can have an outsized impact on the communities that grow them and also an outside impact on Americans' health? So, one of the ones we're really leaning in with is baobab. Have you ever heard of baobab before?
No.
So you've seen it. It's in The Lion King. It's the tree that Rafiki hangs out in. It's kind of this like gnarled, wild-looking tree, and then inside its gourd is this powder that's like amazing for gut health, amazing for skin health. So about a third of Kuli Kuli's products don't have moringa in them, instead have baobab. So that's one of the things we're leaning into. We're also looking into some more products with lucuma, with hibiscus, with shatavari. There's some really amazing plants that many of our moringa suppliers are also growing alongside moringa, some of these other medicinal herbs. So we're starting to incorporate those into our product line. And I think one of the things that I'm really excited about that we're going to be launching next year is we're launching some products that are specifically focused around women's health. We're a women-led company. We're a majority women, organization. And one of the things we think a lot about is how, there's not a lot out there for women's like sexual wellness, for women's hormonal balance. And it can be really confusing, especially as you're approaching various changes in your life to find products that are like not just like weird pills and weird, million different extracts, but made of like full, proven kind of ancient wisdom nutrition.
I love that. I love full ingredients for full foods. I am a vegan now. I think going on 11 years. Prior to that, I was a vegetarian since I was about 16 years old. And, my life has been spent like really looking at my food. Like, I'm not one of those people that, just like, well, I'll just eat whatever it is. Obviously, wanting to stay vegetarian first and then vegan. I was always looking at ingredients. So I think I'm pretty well educated as far as what I'm eating, but I am always looking for, well, what's the easiest I can eat that's going to be nutrition, nutritional value I need, and also be clean. And one of the things that I really loved when I started reading about the moringa was like the nutritional value of it was so great that you could like basically eat leaves, and leaves were the whole meal. Like, and I'm like, oh, that's what we need
Yeah.
to get back to. It doesn't have to just be out of a package in a box. And I know your stuff is in packages right now, but I loved the idea of being able to eat leaves off a tree, and that was my full meal. I'm like, sign me up for that, girl, because that's where I'd like us all to move as a society again. It's like, yes, nature is our friend. We don't have to kill it. We don't have to pesticide it to death. We don't have to kill bugs. I don't know about you, but I am part of the capture and release brigade. It's like no bugs get killed around me. It's like,
Love
let's
that.
work with nature instead of decimating it.
Yeah,
Are you with me,
totally.
Lisa?
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Well, that
I
sounds great. I
agree.
know people are excited to try this for themselves. Please tell everyone where they can find you online so they could get some of these super tasty gummies that I've been like raving about the whole time.
Yeah, so the company is Kuli Kuli Foods, KuliKulifoods. So kulikulifoods.com. Also available on Amazon, also available in 11,000 stores. So everywhere from Whole Foods to Walmart to Target.
Fantastic. I know our audience is definitely going to be interested in checking it out. We will make sure we link you everywhere. And with that said, Lisa, thank you so much for being on the show. It has been so much fun talking to you, and I have learned a ton.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.